Hey, what's up, guys? I'm sorry it's taken me so long on these three builds. My mother-in-law passed away right after Christmas, and she and her husband lived right next door to us. And my father-in-law is basically, he's not quite an invalid, but he's crippled mentally, and he's also physically handicapped. So that's been kind of demanding. Also, now my wife is the only flower shop in town, and we're in the process of getting her set up over here. So there's just been a whole lot of other stuff other than this in the mix that is causing me to take a long time with getting this stuff done. Anyway, today we are going to talk about the tactical barrels. Now, another reason that I've been taking so long is because I've been trying to figure out a way to push these to you guys. No, I'm just kidding. Well, partly, but let me explain. Okay, let's go into a little bit of history about it. It was designed and first manufactured by Jim Chapman, better known as Jim C. So that's his design. You can also see um, this design as well as the SMG barrel on his website. I'll leave a link in the description in case you want to check that out, provided it's still active. Now, he and Drozd teamed up early on, and so Drozd was getting barrels from him and, selling them. So um, now I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but you know, let's be honest, nobody watches this channel, so I don't think anybody's going to get their nose out of joint. All right. Ray told me that he stopped dealing with um, Jim. The main reason was the quality. There were quality issues. So, what Ray did was he basically just took the SMG and tactical barrel designs and started making his own. He would make the shroud pieces. A lot of you guys look at one of these barrels and think that this is the barrel. That's not. That's a cover piece that goes onto it. Ray found a place in India to manufacture the barrels called Pressy Hole. And if you guys are interested in barrel making, that topic, and you try to look up, you get any information on manufacturing, and you're not having much luck, you need to look up the right term, gun drilling, which refers to, doesn't necessarily refer to barrels or doesn't necessarily have anything to do with guns. Gun drilling is just the process of drilling a straight long hole. That's all it is, basically. I'm not sure if it's specific to metal, but if you look up gun drilling, then voila, you'll find all you ever wanted to know about how barrels are made. So, I don't really know what the issues were with the Jim C barrels other than uh, the breeches cracking. One thing that happened, and I believe that started to happen as soon as they came out with the Hopper magazines, because there shouldn't be a problem with the stick magazines, because with the stick magazines there's a metal on metal connection for the latch. With the Hopper magazine, it's the metal latch connected to the polymer magazine housing. And as time goes by, the metal latch wears into that polymer. The magazine sits lower and lower and lower, and which also brings your valve body lower and lower and lower. and that needs to align with the breech of the barrel. So as it sits lower and lower, it will shoot BBs into the bottom edge of the breech and cause it to crack. Now, the the best theory, or the most prevalent theory, let me put it that way, at the time why this was happening, people getting cracked breeches, that is, was because the valve body is shaped so in the very top above battery of a BB, there's a little divot, a little pocket the BB rests in, and that prevents the BB from just coming out of the valve body. So it has to come down and out. Now the theory was the force of it coming down and out, like with high pressure air, it was slamming into the bottom of the breech. But Ray came along and came up with the latch plate mod, and that gives you a metal on metal contact with inside on the outside of the hopper magazine on the back of it. It's standard in anything that I do, so you don't wreck your barrel. And I kind of, when I was talking on the forum, I came in on the tail end of everything, and that was still the prevailing theory, but I'd had this barrel for, gosh, I probably got 250,000 BBs through that. No damage to my breech whatsoever, using 1600 psi, anywhere from 1000 to 1600 psi. So I kind of figured out that it didn't have anything to do with that pocket in the valve body. It had to do with the vertical alignment of a hopper magazine. To mediate the cracked breeches, one of the things that Jim did was to differentially harden the ends of the barrels, specifically the breech end. So those got hardened and the rest of the barrel did not. And from everything that I've seen, that just made the problem worse. So the latch plate is what fixes that problem. It's not hardening the breeches or anything. But since that was the prevailing theory at the time, there were a lot of broken breeches. And perhaps that's why Jim fell out of favor with Ray. Now, this top barrel, these are all rifled barrels. We'll get into that in a little bit. But this is the one that came with one of the guns that Ray sent. And I've never been a big fan of rifled barrels because they don't shoot as fast as a tight smooth bore. They do have their merits. So when I disassembled that barrel, I was thinking about putting a rifled barrel on the first build that I'm doing and using the shroud that came with it. So I disassembled it and I was looking at the barrel and I did my best to clean the inside of it. And, I figured I did the BB drop test on it and the quality just isn't what I'm normally used to when we come to Drozd Max barrels. And I'll give you some close-ups of that in a minute. But the rifling is kind of pitted. There's some scratches on it. And what I was thinking was that these BBs wear the rifling out in these barrels. But I've done some playing around today to find that that is not the case. There was another theory circulating back in the day that I believe to be true now. And that is, if you have the correct bore diameter As the BB travels down the length of the barrel, the BB does not touch the outside of the barrel. It is cushioned by a thin cushion of air all the way around the BB. And after the things I've done today, I do believe that is absolutely true. See, this one is a brand new barrel, and here's my barrel that has, hundreds of thousands of BBs through it. And this is what could be, I'm not saying for sure, but I suspect it is one of the early Gem C barrels, or earlier. If we look at the crown, it's rather rough. There's not much to tell from the breech. It looks fine. But compared to my old barrel, see how much more fine that is? And we'll compare it to the new barrel. So it is certain that Drozd made some very fine barrels. Didn't make them, but put them out there on the market. I will try to get some images of the bores of these. I was trying to do it earlier, and I couldn't do it without them getting overexposed. I don't know about this shroud, who made that, but that was done in-house, at least when Ray was doing it. I suspect Gem C also did it in-house, but I'm not sure. Now, here is mine. This one is just a little bit rougher. Some of the holes are a little sharp. And yeah, there was more finishing that went into mine. Now, I did get some of these after Drozd went out of business, and he told me that he sent them back in for a re-blacking. And that doesn't look like black. That looks more like a bluing. I'm not really sure, but this is some kind of a black oxide on these parts. So I'm not sure. Mine just may have gotten a second finish. Not really sure about that. So back in the day, if I'm not mistaken, one of these barrels would run 175, and I think the SMG barrel ran 125 from Drozd. The SMG barrel uses the same shroud, but the barrel is only about 15 inches long, and it uses a different barrel nut. This is just a washer. Well, not a washer, a bushing. So while we're here, I wanted to weigh all of these parts because I don't have the capability of making these parts. The way I have to do it is I'll take a tube, whatever kind of material it is, make a bushing out of aluminum, and friction fit it inside the tube to go around the barrel, and then I'll just put a barrel nut that holds the tube on, much like the SMG barrels. All right. Yeah, the tubes, I have not been able to get any of the carbon fiber tubes lately. Um, I've got some on order, but it's saying they'll be here in March. So I don't really know exactly what I'm going to do about shrouds, but I've got to get something going. So we're at 11 ounces for all of those parts. And I like it a little bit lighter. Now, I don't think there's any arguing that that looks slicker than owl shit. Probably the coolest barrel that has ever gone on a Blackbird. Uh, but yeah, you do have this extra weight out front. And just personally, I like a little shorter barrel. Now, these barrels do hit a lot harder than the short barrels, but as I progressed throughout this whole deal, I just, settled on shorter barrels. And I think a lot of that has to do with the my shooting habits, which are pretty restricted to just building these things and sending them out. And the short barrels, for me, are just more convenient. As far as the discrepancy between a nice, tight, smooth bore and one of these rifled barrels, back when I was shooting my rifled barrel, and finally got some smooth bores, I did see, I believe it was no greater than 50 feet per second gain across the board. And also, rifled barrels are less likely to get a jam. Now, I don't know if you've ever gotten a jam in one of these, but they are no fun at all to dislodge. Let me go ahead and show you that drop test with each of these barrels. Okay, I've run a clean patch through all of these, just so the BB will go all the way down it. If you do get a new barrel from me, it will come in the original factory packaging and it's not cosmoline, it's some kind of oil in it. It is very advisable that you run a couple of patches through it, just so you get out any grit or any thing that may have been left over from the manufacturing process. You don't want to, get a jam your first time out for sure. Okay, now we have this one that came with that other bird that is possibly a Gem C barrel, and I will count one as soon as I'm in the vertical position. One. Okay. Now let's do that again. Same barrel. One. Now this one, let's see. This one is my barrel that has, I guess, 250,000 rounds through it. One. One. And I don't think I got it on one. Let's do this one more time. One. One. Okay. We're going to start over. All right, for the drop test, what I'm going to do is start counting, I guess, in seconds as soon as I turn it vertically. And that would give us an idea of, how tight the bore is. Now, these are rifled bores, so there will be air, readily available moving to the back of the BB. 1, 2. Okay, so that was the Gym C. We'll call it the Gym C. This one is mine. 250 plus thousand rounds through it. 1, 2. 1, 2. And this one is the brand new one. 1, 2. 1, 2. So I guess we could go back and look at that in greater detail on the counter on the I think what I'll do is I'll look at all those and get an average of each one of them when I'm editing, and that'll be where these numbers come from. So it looks to me like there's no noticeable wear in a rifled barrel. So yeah, I do believe that is correct, that when you've got good BBs and you shoot them out of one of these rifled barrels, it does not indeed touch the rifling. So that was one of the things I was concerned about, because the first time I took my barrel off, I noticed it was rifled, and I had ordered a smoothbore from Drozd, and I messaged him. I'm like, hey, what's the deal with this? He's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, it's not really a big deal, whatever. And I was able to get some smoothbores from him later on. But I was looking at the rifling, and I was thinking, that looks awful shallow. I wonder if it shot out. And after getting some other rifled Drozd Max barrels, no, that's just how it is. It's not very deep rifling, which is good for shooting BBs also. Another thing that you can do with these is shoot lead BBs out of it. Ballistic Products sell these 10-pound bags of nickel-plated lead shot, and that was really popular to shoot out of them back in the day. It will jam up pretty easily in a hopper magazine. It does a little bit better in the stick magazines. It's much easier to get a jam unseated in a stick magazine. Just take the magazine out and flick the follower, and it'll push it right on up in there. Now, I've been wanting to do something about that for a long time, because inside the valve body, where it goes up, you have a larger diameter, and then about right before it enters the firing chamber, it decreases in size, which is good for me because I can put a steel tube up in there that's the proper size, and it won't go all the way into the valve body, and that prevents mushroom magazine. But that is where the lead BBs hang up. Now, if that were to be drilled out to the same size as the bottom portion, you shouldn't get jams there. Now, I'm not really sure why they're like that, but every one of them I've seen has that little step down inside there. It could have something to do with how the second BB just below the BB and battery seats. In Freebird development, one of the things that I found was you could have a BB get in front of the BB, the second BB right below the BB and battery could get slightly in front of the BB and battery, not allowing it to fire. So that might be why that's there. But with the nickel plated lead shot, that's probably not an issue because it is slightly larger diameter. It's actually more closely to 177 caliber instead of a steel BB, which is more like 174, 175. The reason steel BBs are smaller than 177 is so they can be fired out of a rifled bore. Okay, you can see our nickel plated lead on the left and the zinc plated daisy on the right. So this is actually pretty good. I was told that a similar thing happened to the quality of this shot, and the guy stopped using it. And then I came in and I saw where they'd been talking about it on the forum, and I decided to buy some and showed it to them, and then people started buying it again. So there's our nice daisy and the nickel plated lead. Now, I did try to run this in a Superbird hopper with the board jumper, the regulator, the voltage regulator in the 15 volt position. It did not work. So I do not recommend trying to run this stuff in a Superbird magazine. You'll be taking it apart. But you can give it a shot in a stock magazine on, a relatively stock setup. You will have some issues in a hopper. Like I say, it's better for, really high pressures and stick magazines. And even then, you're probably going to have some jams and have to take the magazine out and flick the follower. Anyway, that's not really something that I got very involved with because, the magnetic augers require steel to get the crazy fire rates. So I just kind of went off on a different direction. But that is the other offshoot of where I did not go. So anybody who gets one of these rifled barrels from me will get a sample of this lead shot. And that way you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on getting 10 pounds of it. I think when I got it, it was about $60 for 10 pounds, one of those bags. And I'm sure it's more now. Interestingly enough, you can also run this lead shot out of a factory barrel because they are rifled. If you're not really that familiar with these guns, this is a factory barrel and it sits in there like that. So if you see anything else like what might look like a suppressor, there's a fake suppressor on Blackbirds that attached to that, but that's all you get, and it is rifled. Let's see if we can see. But yeah, do not try to run the lead through a smoothbore because it just won't go in it. And back in the day, another thing on the forum, several people had it in their head that the Drozd was designed to shoot lead, and that's why it had a rifled barrel on it. And somebody even said that it's in the owner's manual. Well, I've never seen it in the owner's manual, and all of them, all the Blackbirds, Bumblebees, and um, classics, came with a little pack of BBs with Russian writing on it. But still, some people had it in their head that they were made to shoot lead, and this is what they were supposed to shoot. Like, somehow that I guess they probably had a hard time during the Cold War getting that stuff from ballistic products. But yeah, so earlier today I asked Sergey about it, and he gave me a more detailed explanation. But I had thought that it was had to be for an economic standpoint because they also made firearms, and yeah, they did make trainer air guns for the military and I guess police, and it was just easier for them to put a rifled barrel on these things than it was to develop a smooth bore and test it and all of this and that. So that's that's what I've believed, and according to Sergey, that's why they're rifled. While I was talking to him a few years back, he sent me a picture of the predecessor to the Drozd, pre Bumblebee, and here's a picture of that. And he also said that they used genuine Makarov parts to make it. And I was sitting there looking at that picture, trying to figure out where are the Makarov parts. And I looked a little closer, and if you look close, the stock is made of wood. So I believe it actually has a Makarov frame in it. Now, before, um, I had just considered that it took parts of the Makarov air gun, which it does. It does take some parts of the Makarov air gun, like the valve body assembly, and barrel nut. And so that is all from the Makarov air gun. I had no idea that it was actually, developed from an actual Makarov and had, what looks to be a Makarov frame inside it. So that's kind of interesting. I know that the Russians did that with the Tyrex and the PPSH. I would really love to get one of those. But yeah, alas, we can't have fun things like that. All right, guys, I'm about to wrap this up. Yeah, I do have the barrels. I'm just, having a kind of a time on making the shrouds for them. That'll work itself out. I do have that 2008. It is built. I'm just, debating on whether or not to put one of these barrels on it and do it like that. I do need to get rid of it. But yeah, so I do think that, you lose a little bit of velocity having the rifling in there, but if that prevents a jam, that, that's pretty acceptable. Now, I did see one of the copperheads, one of the Crossman copperheads that somebody got a jam with a few days ago, and I'd never seen one quite like this. That was out of the red, white, and blue cans. This is some of the stuff. It's okay. It got us through the Daisy debacle, the Daisy Gamo debacle. But I think now, I'm going to be switching back to uh, this the Daisy in this can until they decide to take a shit on me again. Yeah, so I'll be coming out with that video of the '08 very soon. So until then, later.